with Angel in the locker room.
There's never been a team at Maryland, at LSU, and the Chicago Sky where she didn't have some sort of locker room problem with her teammates. People don't enjoy playing with her.
Multiple Angel Reese headlines just got louder after a panel of WNBA insiders finally said what fans have whispered for 2 years. They called out locker room tension, questioned her leadership, and even suggested a pattern of blaming teammates. Most shocking? Claims that her rivalry with Caitlin Clark has become a constant distraction. Nothing was sugar-coated, every concern was laid bare. Now with a fresh start in Atlanta, the pressure is higher than ever. Can Reese silence the noise and prove everyone wrong, or are we about to see the same story repeat itself? The spotlight is on her.
It took place, Jason. In year one, you and Teresa Witherspoon were sabotaging games so that you can go out there and collect double-doubles while you're down 45 points. You're in the game with 20 seconds left, trying to get double-doubles because you're dying to compete with Caitlin Clark. Kennedy Carter didn't like it. She took a fall for it because she got upset with you about it. Marina Mabry demanded out. She didn't want any part of the circus act. Year two. Oh, and you also quit on the team in year one. Year two. It was even more of a circus. Oh, we're trying to play Angel Reese at point forward.
From the very start, the panel hit on what should have been the real headline all along. According to multiple insiders, there hasn't been a single stop neither Maryland, LSU, nor the Chicago Sky where Angel Reese avoided some level of locker room tension. Different teams, different coaches, entirely different environments, yet the same issues keep surfacing. At some point, it stops looking like coincidence or bad luck. It starts pointing to a consistent pattern that follows the player, not the situation. And the experts made it clear they weren't going to sugarcoat it or deflect the conversation. They addressed it directly, raising serious questions about accountability, leadership, and whether real change is actually possible.
On the team, you threw Courtney Vandersloot under the bus, and she had to get on camera and respond to you. You threw Ariel Atkins under the bus. Nobody wanted to deal with you. And you know how bad... Scat, Steve, you guys tell me a sport. Tell me any sport where a player in their first 2 years in the league made the All-Star team or a Pro Bowl their first 2 years. She's about to be an Olympian, and they get traded before their third season.
One analyst laid it out year by year, and the picture they painted was harsh. In her first season with Chicago, the claim was that Angel Reese and coach Teresa Witherspoon were still pushing in garbage time down big, yet chasing stats, especially double-doubles. The criticism? That Reese was too focused on matching Caitlin Clark and keeping her numbers competitive, even when the game was already out of reach. According to the discussion, the box score seemed to matter more than the scoreboard. It reportedly created tension inside the locker room, with Kennedy Carter unhappy about it and taking heat for speaking out. Marina Mabry was also mentioned as wanting out, unwilling to stay in that environment. When multiple teammates look for an exit, analysts argued, it raises serious questions that cannot be ignored.
They suspended you for a half for conduct detrimental to the team. You warmed up, and then when it was time for you to play in the second half, you refused to go in the game, and then you refused to suit up for the remainder of the season. You quit on the team, and the same day as the final game, when your back's apparently hurt, which is why you have been sitting out, you're on a private jet on the way to Vegas twerking and having a ball as if your back never hurt.
Then came the moment the panel said changed everything when Angel Reese walked away before the season even finished. Year one ended with questions, but year two only intensified the concerns. The organization experimented with a surprising role, trying to use her as a point forward, a decision the analysts openly criticized as a complete misfit. They argued it put unrealistic expectations on a player still developing her offensive game and playmaking ability. Instead of stabilizing things, it seemed to create more frustration and confusion. According to the discussion, tensions escalated further with disciplinary issues, including a brief suspension tied to team-related conduct. What stood out most was the claim that when given another opportunity, she chose not to return to the court, effectively stepping away again. The panel framed it as a troubling pattern: missed opportunities, unresolved conflicts, and decisions that raised serious questions about commitment, accountability, and long-term growth.
Most of those picks don't even make the team. They traded her for a bag of Cheetos. They wanted to get rid of her so bad. Angel Reese, I see a lot of people from the Atlanta area chanting it on, "Oh, Angel, welcome home, welcome home." I hope some of you keep it real.
The conversation the panel had didn't start quietly. It started with what they believed should have been the headline from day one of this entire debate. According to multiple analysts on the discussion, they argued that wherever Angel Reese has played so far, Maryland, LSU, and later the Chicago Sky, there have been recurring reports and perceptions of friction within locker rooms. The panel did not present it as a settled fact, but as a pattern they believe has followed her across different environments, coaches, and roster structures. One analyst framed it bluntly, saying that when similar stories appear in multiple places, it becomes harder to dismiss it as coincidence or simple bad luck. Another pushed back slightly, noting that every team environment is different and that young stars often get unfairly labeled early in their careers. Still, the overall tone of the conversation leaned toward accountability, with the panel asking whether the issue is situational or personal responsibility within those situations. From there, the discussion shifted into a year-by-year breakdown of her early WNBA experience in Chicago. Again, these were claims and interpretations made by the panel, not verified conclusions. The analysts suggested that in her rookie season with the Chicago Sky, there were moments of visible tension around late-game decision-making and stat tracking. One specific claim raised was that in certain lopsided games, there was a focus on continuing to pursue individual statistical milestones, such as double-doubles, even in situations where the outcome of the game was already decided. The panel connected this interpretation to broader narratives in women's basketball at the time, particularly comparisons being drawn in media circles with Caitlin Clark. According to the discussion, some analysts believe that external comparisons may have influenced how performances were perceived or framed, even if players themselves deny that it impacts their approach. The conversation emphasized that perception in professional sports can often become as powerful as reality, especially when media attention intensifies around rival narratives. The analysts also referenced reported tensions involving teammates, though they were careful to note that these stories are often complex and come from multiple perspectives. Names such as Kennedy Carter and Marina Mabrey came up in the discussion as part of broader conversations around roster instability and trade movement during that period. The panel's interpretation was that when teams undergo frequent changes, it can signal deeper organizational challenges, but they also acknowledged that professional basketball is a business with constant roster turnover regardless of individual players. From there, the conversation moved into more controversial territory, with one analyst suggesting that Chicago's long-term roster decisions reflected a desire to reset parts of the team structure. However, other panel members pushed back, saying that framing it as a single-player issue oversimplifies how front offices operate. They pointed out that coaching changes, injuries, and rebuilding cycles all play major roles in shaping roster outcomes. The discussion then turned to the trade out of Chicago, which the panel described as a major turning point in the narrative. In their interpretation, the move signaled that the organization wanted to change direction quickly, though they disagreed on the reasons. Some argued it was purely strategic, while others believed it reflected unresolved internal fit issues. The panel emphasized that trades in professional sports rarely happen for one reason alone, and usually reflect a combination of performance, chemistry, salary structure, and future planning. A large portion of the debate then centered on how public perception around Reese has evolved in parallel with her rivalry-driven storyline involving Caitlin Clark. The panel suggested that media narratives can sometimes amplify rivalries beyond what exists inside team environments. They discussed how statistical comparisons, highlight culture, and social media engagement can all contribute to players being constantly positioned against one another, even when they are not directly competing in meaningful head-to-head contexts. One analyst argued that this constant comparison cycle can place additional pressure on young stars, especially those entering the league with massive expectations. Another countered that elite athletes at this level are expected to manage pressure as part of the job. The disagreement highlighted a broader tension in the conversation: whether external narratives shape behavior, or whether professional stability depends entirely on individual maturity and adaptability. The panel also addressed a reported disciplinary situation during her time in Chicago, though they were careful to frame it as reported conduct-related team decisions rather than confirming specifics. They noted that internal suspensions in professional sports typically follow a pattern of escalating communication between player and organization, rather than isolated incidents. According to their explanation, such decisions are usually the result of ongoing internal discussions, not sudden reactions. From there, the conversation shifted toward the trade to Atlanta and what it represents going forward. The panel was more divided at this stage. Some saw it as a genuine reset opportunity for Angel Reese, while others viewed it as a pressure-heavy environment where expectations will be immediate and unforgiving. The most optimistic analyst argued that Atlanta's roster structure could actually simplify her role. With established scoring options like Ryan Howard and Alisha Gray, the expectation would not necessarily be for Reese to carry offensive creation. Instead, her value would be defined through rebounding, defensive energy, and secondary scoring opportunities. That analysts suggested that role clarity could be the key factor in stabilizing her next chapter. Another panelist added that sometimes the most important adjustment for a player changing teams is psychological rather than tactical. Accepting a defined role, embracing team hierarchy, and focusing on efficiency over spotlight moments were all highlighted as key success factors. The discussion then broadened into historical comparisons. One analyst referenced past NBA and WNBA situations where talented players struggled when transitioning between being primary stars and supporting pieces. The point was not to directly compare individuals, but to show that role adjustment has historically been one of the most difficult challenges in professional basketball. Examples were used to illustrate how team success often depends on role acceptance rather than pure individual talent. In championship-level systems, even high-profile players sometimes need to reduce usage, adjust shot selection, and prioritize system fit over personal branding. The analysts stressed that this is a universal principle across elite basketball environments. The conversation then turned toward media narratives and how upcoming matchups involving Atlanta and Indiana are likely to be framed. The panel suggested that games featuring Atlanta versus teams led by Caitlin Clark will inevitably draw significant attention, not only because of basketball implications but also because of storyline marketing. They discussed how modern sports coverage often blends competition with entertainment narratives, creating larger-than-life framing around individual matchups. One analyst described how this dynamic can be both beneficial and harmful. On one hand, it elevates the visibility of women's basketball and increases fan engagement. On the other hand, it can place unfair pressure on individual players by turning every game into a symbolic referendum on personal rivalries. The panel also spoke directly about Atlanta fans and expectations. They acknowledged the excitement around bringing a Georgia-area star into the roster, but cautioned against assuming instant success. They emphasized that roster chemistry, coaching systems, and defensive identity all take time to develop, regardless of individual talent. Another important point raised was infrastructure and arena dynamics. Smaller venues often create intimate atmospheres, but high-demand games frequently get moved to larger arenas to accommodate national interest. The panel noted that this is common in the WNBA when marquee players are involved, and it reflects growing interest in the league rather than individual comparison alone. Finally, the conversation returned to the central question: what determines success in Atlanta going forward? The panel did not reach a unanimous conclusion. Some believed this environment could unlock a more efficient and team-oriented version of Angel Reese. Others remained skeptical, arguing that past patterns will only change if there is a clear shift in approach and mindset. What they did agree on was that the pressure is now significantly higher than in her previous situation. Expectations, media attention, and roster quality all converge in a way that leaves little room for extended adjustment periods. In the end, the panel framed Atlanta as a defining chapter rather than just another stop. Whether it becomes a breakthrough moment or another controversial talking point depends entirely on how the next season unfolds.